My brothers and sisters and my beloved confreres, a very hearty welcome to each one of you to this monthly recollection talk. In the month of November, we remember the faithful departed, the members of our families, as well as that of our congregations, fathers and sisters, parents and siblings who have gone ahead of us to have that eternal rest with the Lord. Once upon a time, the concept of death was considered to be a distant reality. Most of us never thought about death until now. We thought when someone dies, yeah, unfortunately, he died or she died. That's all what we used to say. But I believe the things have rather totally changed. There is a topsy-turvy experience among us when it comes to the reality of death. Death is at the doorstep. With the arrival of the pandemic COVID-19, we have seen so many deaths, not only of people whom we do not know, but people who are in our own families, in our own congregations, and in our own society and neighborhood are suddenly no more there. Death is at the doorstep. A week back, I was driving from Bangalore to Kerala. About 5.5 hours drive. I was just watching one thing. Not less than 10 ambulances were running up and down with their siren honking, reminding each one of us there is something uncertain happening around us. Death is at the doorstep. It's at this time of our life that we are more consciously looking towards a reality of life which is no more far away, but which is a nearby reality in my life. In this context, are we developing a fear of death, or are we trying to become more and more conscious and aware of the reality of death? I wish that as we are celebrating the month of the faithful departed in the month of November, let us take some time to understand how to die meaningfully, joyfully, encountering the Lord with courage and hope. Many years back, my father died. I believe he was not of the age to die when we count it in human terms. He was just 63 years of age. Someone who reared me up, who gave me meaning in my life, who accompanied me in my personal life, is suddenly not there. As a priest, I had to animate his funeral ceremonies. It was a heart-rending experience. As we were taking his dead body to the cemetery, one of our revered priests, Reverend Father Anthony Mookanthottam, walked along with me. I saw his hand holding mine, and he whispered to me, "From now on, you have someone in heaven to intercede for you." My brothers and sisters, that was the moment of enlightenment for me. Thereafter, whenever I preached a funeral oration, especially that of our young priest who died, I always spoke about the message of hope that we need to have at the time of death. Death is not a painful, sorrowful event in the life of a Christian. It is an invitation towards a meaningful celebration of life in the presence of God. Do we have this hope about death? One of the most accomplished books and the most read books after the Holy Bible is the book written by Thomas A. Kempis titled The Imitation of Christ. It is said many people who read this book became saints. But very interestingly, Thomas A. Kempis, who wrote this book, is not yet canonized. There is a specific reason mentioned for it. And the reason is very interesting. After the funeral of Thomas A. Kempis, many years after that, when they opened his tomb, interestingly, they found his body lying upside down. Normally, a dead body is not placed upside down in the coffin, but the dead body of Thomas A. Kempis was found lying upside down. And the interesting definition and the explanation given for it is very touching. It is said, most probably this man, who was not dead and after being buried, was struggling to breathe and was turning up and down and finally died hopeless upside down in the coffin. And that perhaps prevented his canonization. In the traditions of the Catholic Church, someone who dies hopelessly cannot be canonized. I believe there is a message for each one of us. We are called to look into the valley of death, as the psalmist would say, with a sense of hope and courage to know very well, if I have lived my life in accordance with the values proposed by Jesus Christ, I have nothing to fear about death. I should be ready even today to encounter him. Shall we have this hopefulness regarding the aspect of death? I invite you to look into your own self as to how to prepare ourselves for a meaningful death. It should not be a fearful reality for us. I see it in three perspectives. When we make a spiritual journey, we would understand what suffice for our life are three important things. First and foremost, a meaningful youthhood. Yes, my brothers and sisters, I look at the person of Jesus in this context. The way he lived his life during the time of his privacy in the Holy Family, as well as those 3 years of his public life. Have you ever found Jesus desperate about his life? In spite of the difficulties that he faced at the hand of the Pharisees and Sadducees, and various criticisms that were raised against him, Jesus was a focused man because he knew very well what his mission is. Therefore, he committed himself totally to that lifestyle. There's a beautiful film titled Jesus, almost 3 hours of duration, a psycho-spiritual film. In this film, we see how beautifully Jesus encounters life reality. There are moments when he cries, he runs to the side of his mother Mary and lays himself down on her lap and weeps. There are some times when he goes to the beach and plays with his disciples, his companions. There are times when he goes to the mountains to be alone and to be in union with his Father. A meaningful attitude with which he encountered life. Nothing is lost. Nothing is undefined. Nothing is uninteresting. Yes, my brothers and sisters, take cue from this young man, Jesus Christ, how life can become meaningful. He who said that, do not worry about your tomorrow, your heavenly Father will take care of it, has always a conviction in him and communicates it to us. Live your today meaningfully. Shall we have a meaningful youthhood? When a person lives his youthhood in a meaningful manner, he or she would always be able to encounter the second spiritual phase of his or her life, that is, graceful old age. You can never have a graceful old age when your history is bleak. You develop the old age from your youthhood. It's a life journey. Maximum of 80 years we live. And in those 80 years, when we look at our own life, we should be able to say how meaningful it was. Yes, my brothers and sisters, our vocation is to be gracefully aging. Our old age should never become a burden for us. And we must be able to look at life from that light that we have received from inside. And the way we lived it will give us that meaningfulness of our commitment as priests, religious, laity, and faithful Catholics. And the third dimension of our life is peaceful death. And this peaceful death comes when I have had a meaningful youthhood, a grace-filled aging, and now I encounter the Lord in peace of mind, in harmony of heart. There is a beautiful statement made by an old man, Simeon, as he saw the face of the little baby in the hand of Mary. He took that baby in his hand. Looking up to heaven, he told, Lord, now let your servant die in peace. The whole story of Bible is all about this peaceful death. Simeon had been living a meaningful youthhood, a grace-filled old age. Now he has that right to ask the Lord, Lord, send me into that peaceful death. Yes, my brothers, my sisters, let us be aware of this peacefulness that we need to have in order to encounter death. November 2nd is a day set apart for remembering the dead ones in our families and in our church. I remember that old tradition held by our grandparents and our parents. I remember my grandfather, on the 2nd of November, he would make a list of all those people who died in our family, in our surroundings, and those who were very dear to him. And you know, with this list, we used to go to the church. There were so many of them whom we never encountered in life. But at the same time, he would say, these are people who did great lot of good things for us. One thing I found was that at the end of that list, there is one thing mentioned there. Pray also for those who have no one to pray for. My God, I used to think how important it is to endear ourselves to all the humanity, especially to pray for those people who have no one to pray for. When I look today at this age of my life, one thing I can very clearly say is this. I know very well, I have more people in heaven than here on earth who are more dear to me. The number of people who have gone before me to heaven, who surely would intercede for me, are very gracefully enkindling my own life. And that's where I would always say life has got meaning when we know the space that we need to find after our death. Sometimes in our lives, we think that death is a sudden reality. My brothers and sisters, remember, death is not an immediate happening. If I am 53 years of age, last 53 years of my life, I was dying. One very interesting thing that I notice in my life is this. Whenever there is an important ceremony that is to be done, what do? We kindle candles. But you look at most of our birthday celebrations. If a 10-year-old child is celebrating his birthday, we kindle 10 candles and make the child to blow off the candle instead of kindling it. The child blows off the candles. That means perhaps the maximum of 80 years of his life. From that, he has lost already 10 years of life. We are reminding at every birthday our own death day. The possibility of the death is near to us. That's why our Master beautifully mentions in the Gospels how to encounter this reality which comes to us unnoticed. He speaks about a master who comes in the middle of the night. He speaks about a thief who comes to break into the house. He speaks about those virgins who have kindled candles in their hand and are waiting for their master It's all about death. Death is a reality that is around you. You need to prepare yourself to encounter him, like the servant who waits for the master, like the householder who is aware of the coming of the thief, and like the virgins who are awaiting the arrival of the bridegroom. One symbolic presentation that Jesus gives in the Bible that has touched me so much is about this thief. There's a priest whom I know who used to say very often, if death is a thief, how to encounter him? The best thing would be to give away all that you possess in life so that when death comes, it would have nothing to take away from you. What a wonderful preparation. Giving away is the best way to encounter death. Make yourself weightless. Make yourself empty. And that had been the philosophy of life of Jesus. Just like his mother gave her life for him, Jesus began the journey of spirituality through the Gospels by giving away. He gave sight. He gave life. He gave his body and blood in the sacrament of the Eucharist at the Last Supper. And on the cross, he gave what he held so dear to him, his own mother. John, here is your mother. And there it is accomplished. He had a peaceful death. Yes, my brothers and sisters, this is the reality of life that leads to a further heights in our spiritual journey. Death is near you, around you. Are you ready to encounter it? I would like to conclude with that experience of those women who went to the tomb after Jesus was buried. The only concern that they had among themselves was who would remove the stone that is in front of the tomb. My brothers and sisters, it's not at all about the size of the stone. It's all about how we view the distance between life and death. There is a barrier that is still existing between those living and those dead. But when it comes to the person of Christ, and when the women reached the tomb, there is no stone there. It was already removed. They went into the tomb and they heard one voice. Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is no more here. Go to Galilee and there you would encounter him. Galilee is the place that Jesus liked so much. Place of the poor, place of the people who are at the fringe of the society. He remembers them even after his death. Preparing for death is preparing to go to Galilee, extending ourselves totally to the needs of the other, emptying ourselves totally, giving away my own self. Let me live my meaningful youthhood. Let me live my graceful old age. Let me live my peaceful death. My brothers and sisters, as we celebrate the month of November, remembering the dead people, let's always have this awareness within ourselves. Death is not a fearful reality. We shall not be afraid of death, but we shall be aware of death. And let's ask death itself, death, where is your sting? Amen.